So I'm going to make a box. I'm just going to click and I'm going to hold shift to make an automatic squared cube. I'm going to hit Control A just to get rid of the attribute editor. So now I have this. I'm going to call him low. I'm going to come over here. Normally your guys' window is set up like this. I'm going to come here to where it says panel layout. And I have my outliner and my model. And if you want to choose the background different, I'm going to hit Alt B to cycle through these. And I'm just going to turn this to take off the grid on or off. So now I'm going to call this low. And I'm going to unwrap him, make sure that his model is good. So the unwrap looks okay, but I'm going to chamfer the edges. I'm going to go to Mesh, Edit Mesh, Bevel. Now it made it too much to where I don't want this. I don't want that strong of a bevel. So I'm going to come over here to the right under the inputs. And you'll see Poly Bevel 1. So if I highlight that and middle mouse drag, I can change whatever I want. I'm going to go to about 0.01. Maybe let's go 0.05. There we go. I'm fine with that. So now I'll go into my UVs right here. And you'll see that they're all separated. I'm gonna stitch them together. So I'm gonna hold Shift, right click, and you'll see Move and Sew UV. Shift, right click, Move and Sew UV. Click, Shift, right click, Move and Sew UV. Now I'm gonna keep doing it. If I just hit G, it repeats the last function. So G repeats the last function. So I got what I wanted, and I'm going to move these up just a little bit away from that edge. It's about right there. Cool. Now everything's good. And I'm not going to stitch these little parts because that's just too much and that'll warp the image. So I'll just leave it as is. I can close this. And right now the model, it's really faceted, so I'm going to soften the normals. There's two ways. You can either shift, right click, soften harden edge, or soften edge. And that does that. Or you can come up here to normals, soften edge. Either one works. It's exactly what you want. Now I need to duplicate this, so I'm going to hit Control D for duplicate. And that makes a new one. I'm going to call him high. And I'm just going to isolate the model so I only see just him. Now I'm going to start to add a bunch of random edges. So I'm going to Edit Mesh, Insert Edge Loop Tool, and I'm going to hold Control Shift to have it lock in to the panel. So I'm going to go Insert Edge Loop Tool, Control Shift, and it makes my button in the shelf. So now I can just click anywhere I want on an edge. If I try clicking on a face, nothing happens. I need to click on an edge in order for this. So I'm just doing anything randomly, nothing specific. And now I can go into faces and start to bevel random faces. So I'm holding Shift right click and I'm going to go to Extrude Face. And I'm going to middle mouse drag this to have it bevel in. And then I'm going to hit G for it to do it again and then have it go down. And I'll just scale it in a bit. And then I'll grab this one, hit G, have the offset, G, have it go up, and I'm going to have that scaled down. So now I'll come down here. I'm going to grab these faces, and again, hit G for extrude, bevel that in, G. I'm going to have this one push out, but I'm not having it push out, say like this, because that's going to break our model. Rule of thumb, make sure that it's about the size of a thumb, whatever your detail is. So about right there works for me. So now on this side, I'm going to choose these faces. And I'm going to hit G, have that offset, hit G. This time I'm going to have this go in. Now don't go too far into where these intersect, just enough to where they're not going to mess up. About right there. And then now this side, again, I'm just doing random stuff. G in, G, G. So I got something on almost every face. So there we go. So now if I hit 3 on my keyboard, it does preview smooth. So that's decent. I want to start to have some hard edge lines. So I'm going to use my insert edge loop tool to add some hard edges in areas. What does that look like? There we go. A little bit cooler shapes. Maybe this side's a little too empty. Bevel. There we go. So now here's my high poly. Beautiful high poly that I took hours to model, and I'll unisolate. And now I see that right on top. And I'm going to hit 1 to unsmooth it. So right now they're flickering right on top of each other. They're Z-fighting. So that's what we want. We need our models to be overlapping on top. So I'm going to select my high poly. Now I need him to be smooth. I can't just hit 3 and let that do it. I actually need to add the modifier. So I'm going to go to Mesh, Smooth, and right now it does it by 1 iteration. I need it to divide more. So I'm going to come over here to the right under my inputs, Smooth Face 1. In divisions, I'm going to set it to 3. Now obviously it makes it very high poly. I'm going to isolate. It's a lot of faces. That's what I want. I want the detail in here. So now I can hit uncheck. I'm going to select my model. And now I'm going to come up here to Polygons Rendering. And that changes this to Lighting and Shading. And I'm going to go to Transfer Maps. Now, I usually want a normal map and an AO, and AO usually is over here. So by default now, some computers, they don't have the plugin turned on for Mental Ray. So we're actually going to turn it on. I'm going to close this out. I'm going to go to Window, Settings and Preferences, Plugin Manager. And I'm going to scroll down till I see Maya to MR, Maya to Mental Ray. I'm going to hit Loaded, Auto Load, close that. Then I'll go back again, Lighting, Shading, Transfer Maps. Booyah, there he is. So now, let me remove this. When I have my low poly selected and I add Transfer Maps, it automatically adds it to my target mesh. The target mesh will be your low mesh, as it should say low mesh because I named him low. My high res mesh is going to be under source mesh. So I'm going to select my high res mesh and I'm going to choose Add Selected. Boom, high shape. There we go. And now I will choose normal and ambient, and that gives them here. So I'm going to save these out to the desktop into a project folder that I have. I'm going to go to Source Images. I'm going to call him Normal 2. I'm going to make him a JPEG. Save. JPEG, tangent space, yes. I'm going to come down here next to my ambient. Save him the same directory. Source Images, AO2, JPEG, save. And occlusion rays, that's fine. I'm going to open up Connect Output Maps, Maya Common Output, Mental Ray Common Output. Now right now I'm going to just do a test render, so I don't need to render my high quality. I'm going to do 256, low quality, just to see what it looks like. 256. That's good. But now I need to make sure that my cage for my low poly is encompassing this. So I'm going to come up here to Mesh, Both. And if I move this, normally you're not going to see it. You need to push this amount and you'll see this little heartbeat kind of a thing. Now I need to make sure that it's pushed just outside of my model. And I'm going to look around to make sure there's no other intersecting places. It's all good. Now I can hit Bake, let that bake. And let's take a look. So this was an older file. I'm just going to remove this, and here are my maps. So there's my AO and my normal. Pretty good. AOs typically have this nastiness. It's okay. That's what we want. This is fine. This looks good. So now I proofed it, and now I can bake these out high res. So I'm going to come back in here, and I'm going to change occlusion raise. Let's just increase that to, say, 300. I'm going to increase this size to 1024. Oops. High res, 1024. Number of samples, let's go 5. And let's hit bake. Make sure all this is still set up, yes. And I'll hit bake, and we'll see what happens now. This will obviously take a little longer. And you can even see it rendering down here in the bottom.
Is this why you're gonna watch it?
No. Okay, cool. Now that this is rendered out, I'm going to take a look at my maps again. Better. Much better. Yeah, there's this little alias thing. There's always this little effect, and I usually just clone stamp that out in Photoshop, but for now, we got the main idea. So now I can close this, and I'm just going to move this off to the side. Actually, no, I'm going to make a duplicate of him, move him to the side. And now, I will open up the Hypershade. I'm going to go to Window, Rendering, Editors, Hypershade. And I'm going to make a shader for all my textures to go onto. So I'm going to go to Blend, and I'm going to scroll down to File. I'm going to middle mouse drag File over top of Blend, and I'm going to choose Default. And I close that. And I'm going to graph the network. Whoops. No, hold on, sorry. Middle mouse drag File over Blend. There it is. Defaults. There we go. Cool. Double click this, and in my attribute window over here to the right, I can plug in the image. So I'm going to choose my AO as default. You see it happens there. And right click, graph this, and now again File, middle mouse, drag it over top of Blend, but this time we're going to choose Bump Map, and I'm going to double click, and this time I'm going to choose my normal map, and I'll graph the network now. But now I need to select this Bump Map node and change it from bump to tangent space normals. Since a bump map is usually black and white images, normal map is working off of tangent space. It's the purple image. So there we go. So now I can select my low poly, right click, and hit Assign Material. Assign Material, and you'll see it pop in. If you're in 5 mode, you won't see anything. You have to hit 6 in order to see textures. And let's actually turn this from renderer from default to viewport 2.0. Give it a second for it to load, and boom, you see your shaders on top.
Damn it, just
And the little speck stuff happening, that's just from the AO map. Without it, you would just see the normal. So let's see what that would look like without that. So just for fun, I'm going to rip out the diffuse map. There we go. Now we just see the normal map working all nice and neat. And that's all I want. Thank you.